All right. We are live, sir. We are recording.
Oh yeah, we're doing this live, not recorded?
Oh, no, we're recording. That's what I mean.
No editing whatsoever?
No, I try not to because I'm so busy like with other stuff that I try to literally just, let's do this in one take.
Nice.
And that's a good thing, it's a bad thing, I guess, right? But I think the good thing is that it will be natural. The bad thing is that, well, whatever stumbles that I stumble a lot.
Rambling.
Yeah, ramblings we go into, it gets to stay.
I'll try to make my answers concise.
No, don't worry too much. So, welcome to the Jehu Garcia Podcast.
Yay!
We're episode 4, right? Is that right? Yeah, 4. And you're guest number 4. I wanted to start strong, only with interesting people. So that's why you're here, Joe. Okay, so to start off, again, I don't want to make these too formatted or structured or anything like that. But I do want to ask you about you and your beginnings. Don't go as far as when you were born. No, yeah. Yeah, where are you from? Where did you grow up, Joe?
Florida. I grew up in Florida and in Georgia. Oh. And in my beginnings, I worked for my parents. They had a beauty salon for a lot of years, but my first job that wasn't at my parents' beauty salon was at a camera store. Sorry. It was back in the days of film, and it was a still photography camera store. And my first job was the camera store would buy these old SLRs, the old cameras, and I would take them apart. And I had a little bench with a bunch of little cups, and take every screw and put it in, where I could recreate where the screw came from and remember all that kind of stuff. And then kind of clean out the internal parts. Usually there was like dried oil and some stuff in there. Scrape it off, clean it off with alcohol, lube it up, put it back together, and it worked. And we would buy these cameras for like $10 or $20 because it was in somebody's attic, and you like go to crank it, it's like, and we're like, well, we'll give you $10 for it, and they're like, okay, and then I would take it apart, clean it up, put it back together, and it was worth like $300.
Wow!
So that was sort of my first job outside of my parents' store.
The beauty salon industry.
Yeah.
Oh wow! How old were you then? Around that time?
It was in high school. I think I was like 16.
Ah.
Yeah. So I would show up to work, and it was a mom and pop store. Just this older guy and his son owned it, and I would just show up to work and go in the back, and I called it camera camp because I learned about every kind of lens, every kind of camera. They taught me so much stuff, and I really learned about how they work.
Yeah.
Light meters and lenses and f-stops and all of that good stuff in a way that's like, this is how it actually works. And like, I could take a lens apart if I wanted to and see how
they're
it
mostly
works.
Mechanical devices at that point. So a lot of little parts and a lot of, chemical too, right? Because of the film and the whole thing.
Yeah, I learned to process the film. I learned to do prints, the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. So they were completely mechanical. A lot, they had a little battery, like a little tiny, almost like hearing aid battery that would go in the side of the camera that would just be for light meter readings, and that's it.
Yeah.
And just to tell you what the light through the lens was, but.
And that was actually also kind of mechanical, right? It had like a little bar or needle that would go up in your viewfinder, I think, right? Is that how some of them work?
A lot of them had a little bar. Those are the really kind of like the ones from the 50s, 40s, maybe into the early 60s. Eventually, they got into the 70s was like the Canon AE1 period.
Yeah.
Where it was like
FC
you had
lenses.
There was like a glowing thing across the bottom of your viewfinder that kind of like gave you a measurement, not just of what your middle gray was, but kind of your range. You could kind of see your dynamic range across the bottom.
Ah, yeah. So then that what got you hooked into cameras, and then what did you do with that after that?
Um,
Because you had another business,
can you
right?
hear that?
I can. No,
You
it's
can't hear
like
that.
no, it's almost you can't hear nothing.
Do you want me to try and get it to turn off or lower the
No,
volume?
no, you can't hear it. This
Okay,
thing, this
okay.
thing actually has pretty good like compressor thing, the zoom thing.
Compressor. Okay, cool.
So it cuts it all off only when you're like actually talking. It turns the mic on. It's crazy. It's pretty
Oh,
good.
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so the what did I do with that after? So I went to college and I went to film school, and I went to work at the work study there. And instead of taking apart still photography cameras, I took apart movie cameras.
That's right. It's the same thing. It's just bigger and a little bit more complex, but it's basically the same thing.
The movement of the camera, they call it, the thing that carries the film through the camera is a lot more complicated. But yeah, a lot of similarities.
So you went to film school. Where did you go to film school? There in Florida?
No, Savannah College of Art and Design.
Ah, I see. So you went somewhere else. Wow. So you actively went seeking for that. Okay. Yeah, it kind of makes sense, I guess, right? Um, and then what did you do after school?
Sorry, one second. So after school, I shot films from about 2001 to about 2006. I was a freelance director of photography, and I did features, a little bit of TV stuff, and a lot of music videos, a lot of short films, and so after college, I shot films for about 6 years, and I shot films on film.
On film.
It was like, at the time in 2000, the early 2000s, you were either shooting mini DV or you were shooting film.
Ah, okay.
So during that time,
and that's like 60
I
millimeter,
would buy
right?
film cameras on eBay. They would be broken. I would buy broken ones, and then I would fix them and then have working film cameras. So I had 6 film cameras at the time, mostly 16, Super 16, including the Bolex or 2, and one, I had an Arri 2C, which is a 35 camera.
Oh.
But it was the Arri 2C is loud. It's not one of those quiet cameras you can shoot dialogue with. But it was great for music videos. So we shot a lot of music videos with it, and at the time, there was this place called Dr. Rostock, I think it was called, something like that. They've gone out of business since, but you could either sell or go and buy short ends, which were like, somebody had 1,000-foot roll or a 400-foot roll, and they shot everything except for 100 feet. And they would sell that 100 feet because it was too short to do a new fresh take on. They would just can it, sell it to Dr. Rostock. And so we would go and we'd buy all these little short ends and scraps of film and make our films out of that.
And what's 1,000-foot or 100 feet of film worth in time?
So a 400-foot roll on Super 16 is 12 minutes.
Oh, okay.
A 1,000-foot roll on 35 is like 10 minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
So when you got 100 feet, you're like, you got like a few seconds.
So 100 feet on Super 16 was like 3 or 4 minutes. And a lot of times, if you were shooting a documentary or something like that, like a 3-minute take wasn't worth anything. You know what I mean? You didn't know, like if you're shooting a documentary, you're talking to people or whatever, you don't know exactly when your take is going to end. So if you had 100 feet left over, you just switch mags.
Yeah.
And sell that little fragment of film back.
Ah, I see. And that's because it's in a different reel, right? Like, so it transfers from one reel and then it gets exposed and then it goes to another reel. So they cut that in the middle and sell the unexposed.
Oh, so each mag had, let's say a mag had 400 feet in it. You shoot down to about 100 or 75 feet, right? And then you call cut because if that's the natural place for that take to cut, but then you only have 75 feet or 100 feet left, and you're like, okay, instead of trying to record for a couple of minutes and then stop again, let's just switch mags and then have a fresh 16 minutes to.
Yeah. And so who separates that? The lab separates that.
So at the time you had your first AC, your second AC, and your loader. And your loader literally all day long just loaded and unloaded film from mags.
Yeah. Oh, I see. That's yes. So he was.
So your loader would do it.
Oh, I see. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, and then that's where the at least from my side, I never got to work with film, right? But you would hear the tales of people that would shoot the films like with a borrowed camera and just film that like that probably, right? Like film that they could buy little pieces in there and stuff.
It was like at the time, it was like I said, you either shot mini DV or which
was just terrible, right?
Terrible. Yeah.
The quality was like horrible. Yeah.
Well, it was, 420 lines, vertical lines, and a lot of the cameras weren't even that, right? Yeah. A lot of the cameras were scaling to that. So it was it was either that or shoot film, which was just like beautiful, right, all the time. So I tried to push all my projects to film, and then so that lasted till Panasonic came out with the HVX
100.
200.
Oh, really? Well, for us it was the 100. The 100 was the one that was like, whoa. Now.
Was that the one that had 1080p resolution?
Yes, it was progressive. I don't think it was 1080. No, it wasn't 1080. It was just progressive. That's it.
So it was the HVX. It's either 200 or 2000.
Yeah, that did HD. Yeah, that did high definition.
And that did the 1920 by 1080. And it didn't even do that. It scaled up to get to that resolution internally.
Yeah.
But once that camera came out, it became really difficult for me to book gigs on film. People just didn't want to shoot film. So I sold all my film cameras. I bought one of those HD cameras, and I shot a feature film, and I disliked the experience so much that like the day the film wrapped, I sold the camera for like half of what I paid for it. Because I was just like,
here's the crazy thing. Me and Misa went to a presentation by Panasonic. They were announcing that camera.
Yeah.
And we had experience with the previous one, right? Which was basically a video camera. I mean, you would put the cassettes or whatever. I don't remember what format it was. And those we could wrap our heads around. We knew how to shoot video because that's how we started. But then this other one, we're like, wait a minute. Like they only shoot that in the mags, and you still have to treat it like a film camera. You still have to load it up, and we were like, this is insane. This is insanity. Like, this is not a video camera. And we thought, this is crazy. I don't think we're ever gonna use that camera. And sure enough, we never did.
It was the early days of internal file naming for cameras.
Yeah.
So the file naming structures of those cameras were terrible.
Okay.
And the data, there was no DIT at the time. That just wasn't a position that existed.
Yeah.
And so the data wrangling was left to the DP after the shoot was over,
Yeah.
And so I would shoot for 12 hours and then go home and wrangle data for 4 hours in like whatever the most nightmare data wrangling scenario you can imagine, like shots just disappearing, shots on two cards having the same file name, like just whatever the worst thing you can think of in data management is what that camera spit out.
Yeah.
And not only that, it was such a complete divergence from my experience shooting with film, which is, you know, if you're shooting film and a window blows out, it just makes everything around the window look a little bit more beautiful, right? Like, it's like, you know, all of the things that we inherently think of as problems for digital, like small lines and certain bright colors and, you know, things going too bright or too dark or whatever, those are all fine on film. Those are all like, that actually looks quite nice. You know, let's move on.
Yeah.
So when I was shooting film, my analogy is basically I would spend 80% of my time focusing on what made the film more beautiful and 20% of the time on fixing problems. And then when I switched to this digital camera, this one in specific, I spent 80% of my time fixing problems because couldn't let it blow out, couldn't let it get too dark, couldn't have these colors, couldn't have pinstripes, couldn't, you know, all sorts of things. And 20% of my time making the film beautiful. And that difference made me so miserable on set. Just 80% of the time I was unhappy.
Yeah.
So I sold the camera and I said, okay, I guess I'm not a DP anymore. That's done. That part of my life is over. And I started a photo booth company. And my friend and I took about $6,000 worth of photo equipment and turned it over a couple of years into a $2.5 million a year business. And that takes me from about 2006 to about 2011.
Oh, okay. 2011.
So I spent 5 years doing a photo booth business, and the photo booth business was like crazy popular. We did photo booths at the Obama inauguration. We did photo booths for every major motion picture company at their releases, you know, Warner Brothers, Universal, Disney, you know, like we did photo booths for, you know, Guess Jeans, and Red Bull was one of our biggest clients. And, you know.
And this is in the early days. The photo booths were not a thing back then.
They did not exist.
Okay.
Yeah, so DSLRs did not exist. In fact, when we bought DSLR, which was the Canon 5D Mark I, nobody we knew owned one.
Yeah, the Mark I, yeah.
Yeah, it was like 0 people owned them, except for a few photographers. Photographers generally rented them. It was, at the time, it was like $6,000 for a DSLR, and people were like, "That's insane. Who's gonna ever buy that?"
Yeah.
Like at the time, the place in the market for cameras was like, you know, $300 to $500 because there was such a long history of good 35 millimeter SLR cameras.
Yeah.
And so when DSLRs came out at $6,000 to $10,000, people were like, "But why? Like, no one's ever going to buy a DSLR. DSLRs are just a fad that are going to fade away." And they're like, that's what people thought when they first came out.
Yeah.
Like there were like magazine articles about how DSLRs are out now, but are they going to be around in a year or two because nobody's buying them?
Yeah.
That's how crazy the industry thought it was. And now, of course, the DSLR is the most popular thing on the planet.
Yeah.
But that's where people said. So yes, we bought one, and we were like, my friend and I, my roommate and I split it, and we're like, so what does a DSLR do? What does this do for us that you can't do with 35 millimeter film? And the answer was get studio quality photography in like under 5 minutes, you know, like all the way through retouching and everything in under 5 minutes. And we turned that into a business, and it did really well for a lot of years. It's still around. The business is called Polite and Public. They don't use DSLRs anymore, And I sold my share of it in 2011.
No.
But the business is still around and still doing good.
They're still going out.
My old business partner, my roommate, he still owns it, still runs it.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, survived. That business survived. I mean, it became a thing. Now every party you go, there's some form of that, right?
Yeah. So we were I won't say we were the only ones doing it, but we were in the very early adopter stage that there's only a few companies in the entire world doing it.
Yeah. It always helps to be there at the beginning with any business. Yeah, I think so. So then after that, then you went to do the thing, the Bolex thing, right?
The Bolex thing. So.
Hey, and for those who don't understand, can you explain what the Bolex is? For those of us that don't understand, who weren't around.
This is a Bolex, digital Bolex. I don't have the pistol grip around here.
That's a digital.
Oh, I do have one.
But the original Bolex was in the 50s, 60s?
20s.
Oh, 20s. Okay, so it's
the original Bolex I think was in the 20s.
And it was
here is
digital Bolex. That's a digital Bolex. And that's a new version of the old original Bolex film camera.
So the idea with this camera is to mimic 16 millimeter film as closely as we possibly could.
Oh, look at that. It's saying that our meeting is going to end in 10 minutes.
Yeah. So do we have to just start a new meeting afterwards?
It's the first time that we ever get that. It's weird.
So this camera is intended to mimic 16 millimeter film as closely as possible, including ergonomically. That's why it comes with a pistol grip, and you can hold it like this, like you would a 16 millimeter film camera. It has a 16 millimeter sensor that's about Super 16 in size. It only shoots raw footage, single frames at a time, just up to 24 of them in a second. And it has a global shutter and is a native 200 ISO. So the colors are really rich the way they are in film, and the motion is correct the way it is on film. And what I'm really proud about in this camera, if you chart the history of this camera, let's say compared to the Alexa, they both the Alexa came out in 2010, this came out in 2012, but the Alexa wasn't really used on a lot until around 2012. It wasn't really, let's say, mass marketed till 2012. So they both kind of came out around 2012. And this camera is, to my knowledge, you could fact check me, but to my knowledge, this is the only digital camera ever to go up in value since its inception instead of going down in value. So this camera retailed around $3,000 when it first came out, and the Alexa retailed around $120,000 when it first came out. And that Alexa that came out in 2012, the same time this one did, has gone from $120,000 down to about $6,000 in value for a used one. And this one has gone from $3,000 up to about $5,000 in value since its release. So that this camera and the $120,000 Alexa have basically come in and meet at almost the same price point.
That's so crazy.
Over the same duration, over the same number of years. And that's because this is so unique compared to literally any other camera on the market.
It's got a niche. It's got a thing.
It's a very particular niche. And if you're one of those people that just really likes the film aesthetic and the way the film grain works and looks and the motion cadence of film and the colors of film, you're going to get a lot closer with this camera than even with an Alexa in some situations.
Wow. Are those still in production, or they're
no?
So now?
They were in production from 2012 till 2000. I want to say 16, and then they stopped production on them sorry, um, because, well, we could get into that if you want. It's quite a long story. But I stepped down. I was the CEO of that company for the first 3 years of its running. I stepped down because of a conflict of interest with the person, the investor, the person that paid for the company, basically. And then a year later, he shut down production. And then I have been personally fixing these cameras. So back to what I used
Full
to do.
circle.
Now, that's right, full circle. Now, if they break, you can send them to me, and I can replace the parts.
Oh, no
I can,
way. That's cool.
calibrate them, whatever it is, to make them work. I have a bench workshop in my basement that's got all the little electronics things, so I can take screws out, know exactly where they came from.
No way.
Yeah, back to what I used to do in high school, except for a camera I design.
You design and develop. And how was that?
Yeah.
That's the thing that I find interesting, that whole process of designing and developing a camera. I mean, who does that? There's not a lot of people that would
Very
do
few
that.
people get to do that.
Yes. It's not a thing that, and especially at the level you did, right? I mean, this is a camera, like a legit camera.
Yeah.
That went into the marketplace, and it, and like I said, it went up in value. People that bought it, you said, who was your target, or who was the one that ended up using that camera? What was the demographic on that? Like, it wasn't consumers. It was like pro people, right? Like,
yeah. It always was intended for sort of a prosumer market. My market. So I spent 9 months writing a market research paper for this camera, and it was based primarily on education. So the market that I wanted to hit was every middle school, every high school, every community college, every college, university, even YMCAs have film programs. So every educational place that and you'd be surprised, there's tens of thousands of them. It's not a small number of educational places that have some kind of film program. It's so many just in this country. Not even talking tens of thousands in this country. Not talking about outside of this country.
Wow.
Worldwide, there's probably hundreds of thousands. And so my goal was create a 16 millimeter camera that, let me grab another one. So this is one that has a lens on it that was designed in the 70s. And so this lens, can you see the f-stop on it?
Yeah, it's really wide. It's really big.
Where is it? Yeah. This is f 0.78.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. That's probably the biggest aperture I've seen in the lens.
Right? So what's amazing about these 16 millimeter cameras, and why I thought it was worth making a digital 16 millimeter camera, is that there are a ton of these amazing lenses that have like super interesting character, super crazy f-stops, like all these really unique lenses that just don't work on any other camera. There was a Blackmagic Pocket, the first Pocket cinema camera, but the sensor was actually bigger than Super 16. So for instance, this lens wouldn't work on it.
Oh, I see.
So a majority of 16 lenses don't work on the Pocket camera. And really, so to date, this is the only camera that still to this day, digital camera, that works with all these vintage lenses.
Mm-hmm.
So I loved these vintage lenses, right, and that's why I created a camera to work with them.
Ah, I see. And really, it's the only camera. Well, you were really early with this RAW thing, right? Like, there was no product in the market that would shoot uncompressed, especially for $3,000, under 10 grand, let's say, right?
Yeah.
We're barely getting that now, right? Like, that's.
Yeah. Well, and again, this is a deep subject we could get into, because compression happens at a lot of stages. Right?
Yeah.
So there's the back end compression that everybody talks about, like the difference between a 444 ProRes file, which still has some compression, compared to an H.264, which has 20 times the compression, right?
Yeah.
But there's also other forms of compression that happen, or other throughout the image chain. So, for instance, again, that Blackmagic camera, the Pocket one, I talked to some of the designers of the camera, and there are 15 places so they have one circuit board for the whole camera. So the whole camera is one circuit board with a sensor slapped on it. That's why it's the shape and size it is, right? So this camera has 6 circuit boards in it. So the sound is on a separate board, right? There's a sound board. The DSP, which is the digital, sort of the video card, is a separate board. The FPGA, which is the sort of the motherboard, is on a separate board. The storage, the SSD, is internal and also on a separate board. Power, separate board. So that means that the image signal never has to cross a sound signal or a power signal or something else in order to get to its destination. It can just go straight to its destination. And that's a big deal because on the Pocket camera, every time the image crosses the sound or crosses the power, it gets cleaned. It goes through some version of noise reduction because noise is introduced in those crossings. All right, and so real quick, I'm getting into a lot of the nitty gritty on the electronics that I don't normally get into on a thing like this, but I figured because
I think
people are nitty gritty kind of electronic people.
I find it interesting. So if anything,
good enough for me.
Maybe someone else will find it interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing about these podcasts too, that we can just we can talk
do
about
whatever.
Yeah.
So most digital cameras, they're cleaning the image signal many times before it's recorded. Up to 10, 15 times, where it goes through that many steps of noise reduction, which removes the texture from the image. A lot of times you look at a digital image and you're like, why is there no texture whatsoever? It's because they're introducing noise, taking away noise, introducing noise, taking away noise, so much that the image becomes this really clean thing, which is sort of nice for corporate videos, but is not so nice if you want a film look. Yeah. So, and then the other thing with this camera is it has a CCD chip instead of a CMOS.
Which has the global shutter, you said, right? That's the thing about those?
Yeah, that's all right. Just repositioning. So a CCD chip is kind of like a solar panel. Might be a good analogy. I'm just making this up on the fly right now.
Okay.
but it is. So imagine a CCD is like a solar panel, right? So it is collecting the photons and it's storing them in a capacitor.
Okay.
And then during let's say if you're shooting 24 frames a second, the exposure time is 1/48th of a second, right? So during that 1/48th of a second, the photoreceptor is on, and every photon that hits that photoreceptor, that pixel, gets stored in a capacitor. And then after that 48th of a second is over, it closes, it turns off the photoreceptor, and then it empties that capacitor and counts the amount of energy that was stored in it. Contrasted by a CMOS sensor. A CMOS sensor is kind of like a light meter that's just constantly spitting out a light meter reading, right? So the photons that are hitting it, it measures them, immediately converts them to a digital signal and spits out a meter reading, and maybe does this 1,000 times a second, right? So and then there's the GPU in a in a CMOS-based camera collects that data and then averages out. So let's say 1,000, in a thousandth of a second, 48th of a second, I don't know. They did 200 and something exposure readings during that time, right? It would add them all up and then divide by 200 or divide by the number of, to get your exposure for that one pixel. But it's not actually collecting the photons. And I think a CCD actually collecting the photons and then reading those gives you a more organic look than adding up, like a calculation of a series of numbers averaged out over time.
Yeah.
You get really a more organic image.
There's much more processing with the CCD.
Yeah. And then after you collect that electricity, it's still analog at that point, because electricity is analog actually. Mm-hmm. It's not till you go through the conversion process. And then you get to choose how to convert that analog signal into a digital one. And that's a big difference here too, is we got to choose A to D converters and how to implement them. Whereas if you have a CMOS sensor, it's digital coming right off the sensor already. You don't get to choose how that conversion happens. It happens at the pixel level per photo site, which is, you can imagine, a very small A to D converter, where we have 4 A to D converters in here that are very robust and are really in there in a considered way about how to take that analog signal and craft it into something organic and beautiful. You don't get to make that choice unless you're, as a CMOS camera maker, unless you're making the sensor itself, which is why, companies like Red and Airy, they make their own sensors.
They can design their own sensor, or they can pay a company to design a sensor for them, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing as Apple making chips for their computers. They're custom chips to their specs. Exactly. Same thing as Tesla making their self-driving chips. You get into that, right? Like, it's a chip that didn't exist before. It's not taken it off the shelf. But you have to. But your is not integrated. You have different circuits, and you're using different components to make this camera.
So there's 6 different major boards, and then a couple other little boards. Like there's a board for the buttons, there's a board for the update panel, but they're small. But the bigger boards, there's 6 different ones, and separating them out like that. Between each board, there's a metal retainer layer that prevents insulates the boards from each other. So it's like there's a lot of thought and engineering that just went into even how to fit all that into this small package and how to orient them and all that kind of stuff, and keeping them.
How much of that? So you have to. I mean, you either have to learn this stuff or you have to hire someone that knows this stuff and detail, right?
So I partnered with an electronics design firm out of Toronto called Ienso, and they did, we talked about all the options and talked about what the goals were. I wrote the requirements document, which is this huge book full of things that the camera had to do, and down to the electronics level of what has to happen in order to make sure the image signal was maintained at the best level and all that kind of thing. But there's a team of probably 50 engineers there that worked on this.
Wow. Yeah, and this took quite a bit of time, right? I mean,
it took a couple of years before it was.
I think most of us don't realize that. Like we used our phones. These are intricate, amazing computer machines, but we don't realize that it took hundreds, probably thousands of people at the design.
Tens of thousands.
Yes, this is a crazy thing. I mean, and we don't realize it. It's just a thing that we buy at the store. It's got the newer camera and it does the thing, and that's all we know, right? But we don't know the amount of work, the man hours, and the resources that it took, and how many layers of humans it took to like the knowledge and experience and that it took to actually do this.
Yeah, I mean, just the camera on the iPhone probably has, if you're talking from the design level all the way through manufacturing to, because, there are essentially designers at the manufacturing level that figure out how to make this stuff and figure out how to make the machines that make this stuff. There's probably, 10,000 people that work on just the camera for the iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
I mean, it's a big, that's why, when you talk about economies of scale, there's a lot of these like sort of disaster movies and things like that where like in the Avengers, where 50% of the people disappear, and they don't go into it in the Avengers, but if 50% of the people disappeared, if 50% of the market disappeared, every economy of scale would collapse. Apple would go out of business immediately.
Yeah.
Every car company, every bank, everything that's an economy of scale would immediately collapse. Like there's no surviving that for a company like Apple. You know what I mean? If they lost 50% of their revenue, there's just zero way to survive.
Yeah.
And because every single thing they do is so complicated.
Yeah. Which I don't want to jump around, but leads me to the thing where I'm like, hey, let's get this thing rolling again, because we're in the middle of this pandemic and everything's still shut down, and we're like, people are not realizing that the supply chains are being destroyed right now. Like everything other than the retail side of things, it's like non-essential. And you're like, what are you talking about? The people who make screws, the people who make chips, the people who make paints, all those people are not working right now. And
I mean, in China, they're working now.
Well, we don't know for how long they weren't working. That's the thing, though, right? And it's kind of weird because I get the sense that in some places they are, but in some places they're not. I'm having trouble still getting stuff, and then they get kind of cryptic. They're like, oh, sir, like wait a few days. And I'm like, why? What do you mean wait a few days to place an order? Well, it's difficult right now. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So depending on where they're at in the country, they're either up and, operating and ready to send and eager to send us stuff, or they're like, no, we can't. There's no shipping. The factories are not sending. So I'm getting that, like, mix. Depending on where they're at, Hong Kong seems to be up and running. Like, whatever I order from Hong Kong, it ships right away. But some other places in China, they're not. And so
I ordered these recently, and I got my shipment in.
Oh, yes, the little...
Can you see it?
No, 2000?
Yeah. This year.
There you go.
Can you read that?
Yeah, a little bit. It's this camera. It's not exposing correctly for that.
Webcam.
The webcams. Yeah. Which, by the way, if we can have such amazing cameras, why are these webcams? There we go. Now you can see it. There we go. That's how we feel about 2020.
I know.
Right? Well, so that's cool. You design a camera. You're the only person that I know that design a camera. I don't know. I mean, I don't know anybody else. There's not a lot of you, probably.
Not a lot of people.
Because like any other camera that we use, the GH4, the GH5, that's a team of people. That's a giant team of, that's a multinational corporation thing, right?
The Alexa is, I can't remember his name right now, but it's basically one guy.
One dude.
I mean, he doesn't do all the engineering, but the same way that I designed the ergonomics, where the monitor is, how it works, the image aesthetics, all that kind of stuff. On this, he does for the Alexas. And he's one guy. He says where all the buttons should go, how the menu should work, what the final image should look like. It's really one guy.
Oh, dang, okay. Yeah, but
that's the only other company that I've ever heard of.
And that's a kind of a niche product too. I mean, it's Alexa, I guess. Everybody uses almost every
bigger.
production.
Every
production in the world almost uses it. It's kind of the camera to go, right?
Yeah.
now for a
And
decade
that
or so.
image standard has been set by one dude in Germany.
That's crazy.
I've been wanting to meet him. He came to NAB like 3 years ago, and that was his only visit to NAB, and I didn't get to see him at the time.
Oh, really?
But when I go to NAB, I'm like, oh, I want to meet that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. How about the Red people? Have you ever met them? That's also kind of a small company, right? They're not. They're kind of they're kind of small. They're doing their thing.
I mean, Jim Gennard is famous for having said, if you want to become a millionaire by starting a camera company, start out as a billionaire.
Yes.
And lose a lot of money, and now you're a billionaire.
Now you're a billionaire. Yes.
So he created Oakley sunglasses, which during the height of sunglasses in the 80s, got government contracts.
What? Okay. Wow. Okay.
To sell basically a pair of Oakleys to every single soldier in the country.
It's a subsidy.
At like $250 to $350 a pop.
Yeah.
For pieces of plastic that probably cost him $3.
Yeah.
And became a billionaire.
Wow.
Back when billionaires were just like, him and
Bill Gates,
Steve Jobs, and Bill Gates. Yeah, that's it.
Wow, that's crazy. But then he went, so that's how he made his money, and then he went and spent his money designing a pocket camera, which, by the way, the original camera he promised us was a pocket cinema camera.
Yeah.
That never came to be.
For around $3,000.
For around $3,000. That never existed, right? It was never
existed. The 3K, it was supposed to be a 3K camera for $3,000, and it never happened.
It never happened to this day.
And I was watching because around the same year, 2012, is when that was supposed to happen. I was like, oh, if he comes out with his camera first, maybe this is irrelevant. And it never came out.
It never came out.
I mean, he obviously came out with other cameras.
Yeah. The original camera is this big. It had a beautiful image from that. You can currently. The other day I was checking eBay to see if you can find it. You can probably pick up whatever, like $2,000 or something. Fully.
The red one.
The red one, a red one.
Yeah.
And I
don't know I haven't seen how much those are on eBay.
I was telling Lisa, I'm like, we should get one of these, just for sentimental value. Like, I'm like, we couldn't buy it then, but we can have it now.
No, but you should buy an Alexa for $6,000.
I should.
Why not?
Yeah, is that how much they're doing?
Red doesn't support those Red 1 cameras anymore, but Aries still supports even the original Alexa.
No way.
So yeah, if you go buy what do they call it now? The Alexa Classic.
Okay.
It shoots 1920 by 1080, and it uses the S/S, the original S/S cards.
Yeah.
And you can get one for $5,000 or $6,000 on eBay now, and they still work. And if they don't work, you can take them to Aerie and they'll fix them. Wow. Yeah, that's a thing, right? That's a difference. Aerie is one of these companies that it's a legacy company, right? So they kind of stand behind their equipment, and they'll probably fix for over 100 years.
They'll probably fix a 50-year-old like film camera, right? If you send it to them, or
I think probably, yeah. Yeah, so that doesn't exist widely, I think, in the marketplace and stuff. But no,
that's interesting. So yeah, you're among a small group of people that have single-handedly commissioned a camera, not just a camera. Like I mean, this is a cinema camera, right? That shot raw in a time where there was no other product at this price point that was shooting raw. But there was no other camera that shot raw at that time. There's no digital camera that shot raw. How did you manage to do that so early on? I mean, was it? So,
again, it's all about that image signal.
Is that groundbreaking?
I don't know if it's groundbreaking, but it's not what other cameras do.
But so you weren't using like technology that wasn't available. This stuff was like Nothing
It
was
was all
custom.
available.
Nothing is custom design. Nothing was like.
No, we tried to use as many off-the-shelf parts as we possibly could.
Hmm. So it was just a lack of people or engineers or companies trying to make that product,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah, it's still the reason this camera has gone up in value since its inception is because nobody still does it.
Yeah.
Like there
Nobody still
isn't a
knows.
camera company that uses a CCD sensor, has a like puristic data flow to an embedded SSD that you know, we don't do any noise reduction of any kind at any stage. What we do is capture the photons in the sensor, convert them to digital using the best analog to digital converters we could find at the time, and then try to puristically save that data to an SSD without changing any of it at all, trying to give you the original beauty that the sensor creates. And basically nobody does that. Everybody messes with the image along the way. They squish it for log. They denoise it here, denoise this part. You know, they're compressing this or whatever, and they're not giving you a pure image signal off the sensor, and you can tell.
Yeah. And you either like it or dislike it, but it is what it is. It's a highly manipulated, highly.
It's always highly manipulated. Yeah.
Image.
You know, especially when you're talking about like the Sonys and the Panasonics and the Canons, and you know, there's so much image manipulation going on that if you saw the raw sensor data, you'd be like, what is this? You know what I mean? Like, doesn't even look like an image you'd recognize.
Yes. Let me see here. What happened?
Because what they're doing, you know, there's this thing called the CFA.
Okay. All right. So we're here. We're back on a different program.
So now I work for a company. We're just changing our name. But it's a startup that focuses on like deep learning AI for movies and TV, basically.
For movies and TV.
Yeah. So you've heard of deepfakes, right?
Yeah.
Deepfakes, where they replace one person's face with another person's face.
Yeah.
So basically, we think there's a lot of application for that in the TV and movie world. Let's say replacing a stunt double's face with Johnny Depp's face.
Yeah.
Or, you know, adding in weird effects on somebody's face that aren't really there, like beyond makeup effects. But like, let's say, I don't know, you could make a glowing tentacle stick off of somebody's face and then 3D model that tentacle, move it around, do all the animation in 3D, and then use deep learning to stick it on their face.
I see. And
there's a lot of it's a really and it's, you know, the generative adversarial networks systems that are out now that people are using to generate art, to generate, you know, animations and all this stuff. It's definitely going to be an important part of the future.
So, which brings us to the next thing. Let's talk about trending topics. How are you?
Tell me.
How are you dealing with this thing?
Good. So, well, luckily, this new company that I work for, I can work from home.
Okay.
I remote in, and basically, I'm still working a full-time job, and I'm still making music videos when I have time, and still working on cameras when I have time. And I have like 7 jobs still.
Yeah.
So I'm very busy. I would say maybe more busy during quarantine than normal.
Has things, because you live in a very unusual place. You're still in downtown?
No, so I left downtown
okay.
In I left downtown in November of last year,
Okay.
and we moved to a place called Shadow Hills, which is just north of Burbank, and is like a horse community. So we live down this long private drive. Our only neighbors are a horse boarding facility. So I like to say our only neighbors are 65 horses.
Wow. That's a
it's pretty cool.
So that's a drastic change from where you were at.
It's a pretty drastic change.
You lived in downtown LA, which is very like you're one of two people that I knew your neighbor too for some reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, to us it seems really strange. I've always lived in the outskirts of the city, whatever. What is this called? This is suburbs, I guess. Yeah, the suburbs, right? And yeah, you lived in downtown. That's a weird thing. But you're gone.
I liked it.
You liked it?
It was nice. It was nice at the time. I'm glad I don't live there now during a pandemic, though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's so crazy, huh? Downtown probably changed quite a bit, right? I mean, it was a hustle and bustle of everyday, business downstairs, and then probably right now it's kind of deserted.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't go there anymore because I don't go anywhere anymore. But there was a time when it was really fun to be, right near all the restaurants, and the Alamo movie theater just moved in downtown, and it was fun for a while, but we definitely got out at the right time.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. It was the right timing.
If we tried to leave even like a month later, we would have been really in trouble.
Stuck. Did you sold that place? Is that what happened?
No, I never owned it. I was renting.
You were renting. Oh, I see. Yeah, it would have been hard to try to sell something in downtown right now, I guess. Although, you know what, to tell you the truth, I'm like going crazy over here. Like the business has never been better for me. But I think it's because I sell stuff that is kind of geared for like preppers, right? It's just for a different kind of preppers.
Yeah.
It's like you got to be prepared for your energy needs. People don't think about those needs until they don't have them anymore, and you're like, "Oh my God, my phone doesn't work." And you're like, "Yes."
And also, people right now are just home.
They're home.
So, like, we're having some. So we moved into this place in November, and there's a lot of things. It didn't have central air. It didn't have a lot of things like that. So that we're putting those things in. But a lot of the contractors that I talked to are like, "Yeah, we're super busy because people are home."
They're calling us.
Yeah, they want to fix things in their house that they've been ignoring for years. Yes. Because now they look at it all day, every day, and they're like, "Oh, I got to fix that."
Yeah, and it's starting to get hot, so people are like, "There's no way we're gonna be home."
We ordered a refrigerator. It's been like 2 weeks. It hasn't been delivered yet because Sears was just like, "We're slammed. Like everybody's ordering refrigerators and washers and dryers and things because they're just home."
And then a lot of that stuff is also like that's considered non-essential stuff, right? So a lot of people aren't actually showing up to work, which I don't blame them. I mean, listen, in December, no, when was it? February, I flew to Texas, and I was among the few weirdos, me and my wife, that had masks. Right? Because I was like, look, this doesn't look good. Like, this is happening in China. There's a lot of business that happens in China. There's a lot of air traffic from China to here. I'm going to the airport. I'm like, if we're going to catch this thing, it's going to be at the airport. And I'm heading there right now. I'm like, let's put this mask on. So, and then I kind of thought, like, this could go on for months and it could go crazy. There's major disruptions. When they announced that, I'm like, yeah, it's almost looking like that's how it's going to go. And sure enough, right? The predictions were not off as far as the disruptions. And so, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just a regular dude. I don't know if this stuff is real or not. I could just what I hear. And I'm like, if I'm going outside, I got to wear my mask. And if I don't have to go to work, if I had to work like a regular job, I probably would stop showing up too for a while.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Because I'm like, I don't want to catch this thing.
Mhm. No, and that's the thing is like people are like, oh, herd immunity and that kind of stuff, and I'm like, no, like they're recently finding that even if you survive it, that there's if you're one of these people that just have no symptoms and you get over it, then you're fine.
Right.
But if you get sick, and you're sick for a couple of weeks or 6 weeks or several months, like a lot of people are, and you survive it, it's great that you survived it, but there's evidence of long-term organ damage. So, you know, when you're older, you're going to be on dialysis, or you're going to have kidney failure, or you're going to have some sort of organ failure that was like that they'll be able to trace back to your illness with this particular virus, and shorten your life by 20 years.
You think so? I don't know. Really?
Mm-hmm.
I'm skeptic. I'm skeptic on a lot of that stuff, right? Because it hasn't been around for this strain, right? If this is the strain that is different than the other strains, well, then we haven't really seen it, unless you're saying, is this old enough to now see some evidence of that?
No. They're saying in people that have recovered, they're looking at people who have recovered, right?
And they're
seeing long-term organ damage. They're seeing
those damage
organ
that
damage
will be damaged for long term.
For the rest of their lives.
Wow. Okay.
And okay, fine. You have kidney damage now when you're 40. That's fine. But when you're 65, that same kidney damage you got today is going to vastly affect your life when you're 65.
Yeah.
So that long-term organ damage that you're getting by getting this illness today for herd immunity, that could shorten your life by 25 years.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah, it's crazy, right?
So I'm gonna hold out for a vaccine because, like, I kind of think anything else is a little nuts.
You think so? Really?
Yeah. Like I am not like, except for in a super controlled situation where like you're in an office of less than 10 people, everybody gets tested every couple of weeks. You're like in some sort of really controlled situation, like. I'm not going to go to a grocery store until I get a vaccine.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, we just order them online. They deliver them now. You know what I mean? It's like not, you pay $10 extra, but then you don't have your life shortened by 25 years.
Yeah, possibly, right? So, do you know anybody that has gotten it? That's gotten infected? Tested positive?
I know people that have tested positive for the antibodies, which is
for the antibodies. Who knows? Yes.
And I know a couple of people who have had either relatives die or relatives get sick and then recover. I know one or two people that have had it, gone to the hospital, and then recovered. And those couple people are relatively young, but still, like who knows what their long-term effects are going to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm being very careful.
Yeah. I kind of. The skepticism is growing on me though with this whole shutdown stuff, right? It's like, but I still wear my mask. I mean, I still have it, and when I go to the store, I don't go. It's weird for me. Like, I kind of feel like I'm super lucky because I'm so antisocial that I've been on quarantine for years.
20 years.
So, it's like business as usual for me. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like. My social interactions are very limited. Like I literally have rearranged my life in the since you've known me. Like probably when you first met me, I was transitioning into that, right? Like, but in the last few years, like literally I've just cut all social interactions with people that just the outside world. I'm like I just interact with a few people. I'm a one-man band when it comes to like my business stuff. I'm kind of starting to hire people again, but kind of on a limited basis and stuff. So I feel like I'm not the norm, right? And I try to be empathetic for like the rest of the world. I try to envision like what would it be if I was just like a normal guy, a normal person that has to go to work, that works for a boss and a company. And
imagine you, like you work the register at a grocery store. And you see 165 people a day stand, 2 feet away from you.
Cough on you, sneeze on you.
Yeah, a whole bunch of them won't refuse to wear masks or whatever. And then imagine, like you have a 75-year-old parent at home that you see at night.
Yeah.
That's the position a lot of people are in.
Yeah, it's tough. I got to feel for them. Not only that, but also your normal life was to go and interact with that many people, right? Like you go to work, you have your friends, you have your thing, you never talk to your family. I mean, a lot of people kind of they're not close to their family. Like their friends are friends and, colleagues are friends. And then all of a sudden you're like, no, that goes away. And now you're 3 months in, you're like, I'd be going crazy.
Yeah,
I'd be going nuts. So I feel pretty blessed, pretty lucky that I'm not in that situation, right? Like I've been able to, like you, stay busy. I'm busier than ever.
Yeah.
I think the ones that are gonna suffer from this are people like me, maybe like you, people that know how to hustle, right? Like nothing's ever come easy to me. I always have to hustle and try to force things to happen. I'll be fine. Like this new landscape that is gonna emerge out of this. Like it's gonna be fine for me.
Yeah.
Because it's business as usual. But for a lot of people that were just used to going to work out a bank or some job, office job or whatever. Poor people,
it's
man.
a different world. It's a different world.
They're gonna be hurting.
It's already different. Yeah.
Yeah. What about these riots that are happening? We're in the midst of this. Does the world seem like it's extra chaotic, or is it just the same? It's just the new way. It's just today's chaos.
I think the world is getting and will keep getting tougher. At my day job, when I used to go into work, I used to write a weekly posit on the board, like Joe's weekly posit. And my posit for just before coronavirus was that we are leaving the honeymoon period of humans on Earth.
Wow.
Meaning the first few thousand years of humans on Earth has really been a really happy honeymoon period between humans and Earth because there's basically no predators that take us out. We've conformed the entire planet to our needs. It's really been a very hospitable place for humans to exist.
Yeah.
But with the coming climate change and all of the sort of problems with a society the complexity of society that we're moving into, I think it just gets harder from here. From here on out, life on Earth for humans is just going to be harder.
Yeah.
For the rest of human existence. There's a book by Anna Lee Newitz, which my girlfriend recently recommended to me, called Scatter, Adapt, and Remember. And the subtitle is How Humans Will Survive a Mass Extinction. And there have been these mass extinctions that this planet has moved through that usually take a few million years. But there have been a whole bunch of them where life has just been, 95% eradicated.
Yeah.
There's one in the early Triassic period, I think, where there's this creature, I was just listening to it, called the Blisterosaurus. It's kind of this half lizard, half mammal, sort of looks like a pig, has a beak that's made out of keratin, like antlers or horns, and has two little teeth sticking out. And it is basically the only vertebrate creature to survive the early Triassic period. Wow. So everything else died. Everything else that was alive is dead except for these kind of lizard pigs And this is the same period where all of the continents all kind of come together into one giant, I can't remember what it's called, the giant continent.
Pangea.
Pangea, exactly. And so they spread out across all of Pangea. They're basically the only vertebrate animals that survived the early Triassic. And what happens is new ecosystems keep popping up every couple million years and then immediately dying out. New ecosystem dies out. New ecosystem dies out. And for 30 million years, this happens. And this one lizard pig survives all of it and is the only reason that vertebrate life is here on Earth today.
Wow.
Without this one lizard pig who just had these weird lungs and weird nostrils and this was designed to live through this early Triassic period, vertebrate life would have died on this planet.
There we go.
So we're going into another one of these mass die-offs. You know, we've already seen 70% of species in the last 200 years are gone. So we're already well into a mass die-off. And that's the thing is, you know, creature survival is all about diversity. How many different creatures are there to sort of provide an ecosystem? And, you know, other than the creatures that we farm, we have eliminated
yes
70+% of the creatures on this planet. And that's what happened during the Triassic. Even bugs. Almost all the bugs went extinct in the early Triassic period. You know what I mean? So it's like plants went extinct in the early Triassic. All the fish went extinct. It was just like a few plants, this lizard pig, some mold. That was it for 30 million years. And that's sort of what we're heading back towards. And it's going to be really hard for humans to survive it. We really have to be smart to survive it. And like the number of people that we've hit, you know, we're getting close to peak human, which will be like the most number of people that the planet can survive. And then the numbers will go down from there. And it'll get harder and harder for humans to survive on this planet. And,
yeah, we're what, 8 billion? Past 8 billion? I think we're past 8 billion, right? Yeah, that's a lot of humans. It's
a lot of humans, right?
Okay, it's not more than, what was I reading the other day? Is it bugs? Ants?
Ants. We're at 7.8 billion right now.
Oh, 7.8.
7.8. Yeah, so black ants are the most successful land creature on the planet because they're on every landmass in high numbers. And
so by volume, they still beat us.
Yeah.
There's still more ants.
Here's the weird thing. So, you know, there's carpenter ants and red ants and all sorts of different ants. And when different ant colonies meet, they fight for territory and yada yada. Black ants are all the same family.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when two black ant communities find each other, they're like throw picnics and have parties and like they don't fight each other, which is why they are the most successful creature on the planet, because they're basically all one like Italian family. You know what I mean? Like they all love each other, they all get along, and they don't fight with each other. They fight with other ants, but they don't fight each other, and that's why they are
so crazy. Because all humans, we're all cousins. We're all related, right? Like, why
we don't treat each other that way.
Why are we so bellic? Like, why are we just killing each other? Because we're really good at killing each other. I mean,
and even when we don't kill each other, we're just so divided on how we see the world and approach the world and try to create, you know, what we see as the right reality for us. That the chances of human survival over the next, like, let's say 2 million years, which sounds like a really long time, but when you look at like the span of life of like the lizard pig I was talking about, he was around for 100 million years, you know, and humans are going to do not nearly that well. Humans, you know, dinosaurs were around for 165 million years. We're not going to come close to that. We're going to, if we survive 2 or 3 million, it's going to be lucky.
Even with technology, though? Well, there are people that speculate that other that humans were more technologically advanced in earlier times, right? And then those civilizations died or whatever. Who knows?
I don't know about that, but I think if something from humanity survives, it may be AI. If we're able to create a generalized artificial intelligence that like humans are terrible space travelers. Like the amount we're just really bad at it. The amount of like food and water and staying alive and waste and all that it's just ridiculous to try and travel humans through space. But AI, you load it onto a computer, you shut it off for 1 million years, shoot it in one direction. 1 million years later, it gets there and turns back on, and
nothing happened.
And AI is a great space traveler. So if human beings have a lasting impact on the greater universe, I think it's going to be through AI traveling the universe, because AI will just be so much better at it than people. People are just...
So that's interesting. So then if humans were more advanced at any previous time, we would have some evidence of it. It would be AI.
Well, on this planet, yeah.
Yeah.
The tough part is...
and of course, there is some evidence, right? Like there are like some stuff that you ask yourself, like, how do they build this? How do they... But that's...
Well, they had technology, but they didn't have computer technology.
Yeah. Definitely not more advanced than us now.
I'm going to draw the Big Bang and sort of an expanding universe, right? You see that?
Yeah.
Is that clear? Mm-hmm. Sorry, the sun is coming in my window. Okay, so the universe explodes into existence and then has been growing ever since, right? So the universe is kind of growing in these rings, and let's say we're here, right? A planet that has gone through the same duration, the same evolution in the universe is more likely not to be near us, because this is a separate ring. It's actually more likely to be way over here, right? Because that's the same distance from the center that we are. Mm. And that's why we don't find aliens, is because the scale of time, again, the universe is billions of years old. We're only 1 million years old, maybe. And the idea that two species are going to evolve at the same time in the same part of the universe at the same technological level, that they're going to be able to like send radio signals back and forth, is just really small. Like most likely if there are other human level intelligences out there, they're probably on the other side of the known universe. And and it's just going to take so long for our radio signals to get there and back that humanity may not survive.
Yes. we would have successfully killed each other.
Eliminated ourselves. It's much more likely that we successfully kill each other than survive at this point.
Yes. That's crazy. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. What about so what about this it's kind of a weird way to transition, but space. Let's talk about space now. Let's talk about these cops. What do you think about this thing happening right now? I just saw the cops, the riot police arrested those CNN correspondents live on television, and you're like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, did that just really happen? Oh, this is weird, because I'm like, wait, you guys create civil unrest, and then you try to smash it by arresting everyone when people go crazy. That's weird. Like,
so I don't know. My girlfriend is actually from that area, and really? I don't know. Really what's happening in that area right now.
Dude, there's a lot of. I saw some images, and I thought I was looking at Syria or some. I didn't know the riots were that bad. I thought it's like, they burned one building or something. No, they're like crazy.
And there's a lot of local reports from that area that that strongly believe a white cop from another police station started the riots and started burning buildings and incited.
I saw the picture, yeah. And I'm like, I mean, I'm skeptic, right? I'm like, everything, I'm like, I don't know. But
I don't know either, but people that were on the ground at the time believe that to be the case. And I don't know if you ever really find out the truth about that kind of thing. But
after the fact, a lot of times, I guess, is more likely. But
inciting riots is, like apparently it was a peaceful thing before this group of,
it's
it was like black people were protesting peacefully, and white people came in and turned it into a riot.
Yeah, and you ask why. You're like, wait, why would that be? And you're like,
well, and then you see
you escalate it up so he can shut it down.
The president's response, where he's like, "Well, I'm going to just call in the army," and it makes sense.
Yeah, that's crazy, huh?
Yeah.
And I've been known to be angry at cops at times because I've always been on the wrong side of the law for a long time, right? But yeah, this seems, I know. We're almost like putting a microscope on every single one of these incidents, right? But it's so easy to do that now with social media and stuff. But
it's easy to make a lot of assumptions.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, it's nothing new. I mean, like the Rodney King riots were before social media, and, and it escalated to that point, right? Did anything change? I don't know, right? In the 90s, did anything change off of that?
I think there's probably more social awareness after that than before it, probably. Yeah. I don't know. I was pretty young at the time, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, most of that I'm still like fascinated by some of these documentaries that I see now that after the fact you can go and put together the story and pick the right angles and the right footage, and you're just like, wow, that's amazing that happened while I was alive, and people didn't know. I think there's quite a bit of that happening now, right? Speaking of that, have you seen anything lately that it's a must watch?
Devs. Yeah, have you watched Devs?
No, what's Devs?
Devs is a show, I think, on Hulu, and it's about it's a smarter take on like simulation theory and that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
And and supercomputers and all that. I really enjoyed it. I think it's.
And it's a series.
It's a series, yeah.
It's a series, okay.
Yeah. Oh, like not a comedy. Yeah, no, it's not a comedy.
Yeah, no.
It's a drama, I guess.
Oh, it's a drama. Okay, so it's a drama, not a documentary.
Sci-fi drama. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Not a documentary. No.
Oh, I see.
It's by the guy who did Ex Machina.
Ah, okay.
Did you see Ex Machina?
Yeah.
So it's a longer, smarter version of Ex Machina.
Ah, I see. In a miniseries.
Yeah, I really.
Ex Machina miniseries.
Yeah, miniseries.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to check that out. It's a dark.
It's beautiful. Also? The soundtrack is amazing. Is it what?
It's a dark, so it's like right.
It's pretty dark.
Moody. Yeah, I remember Ex Machina was like.
Oh yeah, beautiful. Yeah. The music is crazy. It's just great.
Wow. You've been watching, no, you've been busy, so you haven't been watching a bunch of movies in this lockdown.
I haven't been watching as many as other people have, for sure.
Yes. Yeah, me neither. I'm like, I would want to just sit down and watch movies, but yeah, you don't. Do you know what I just saw the other day when my wife was watching? And I walked by and I was like, The Sound of Music. She put The Sound of Music on, and I walked in there and I'm like every shot was amazing. Like
yeah.
Beautifully shot, beautifully lit. I was like, I understand now why this is a classic movie. Like, why everybody enjoys this so much. Like, I for some reason didn't think about it. I was blown
And
away.
what's funny about that movie is I think you have to check me on this, but I think that one was actually a box office failure, and like people didn't like it at first, and it's only because they basically gave the TV rights away for free every year that people started watching it, and it's become so famous. But when it first came out, like people did not like it.
Really?
Yeah, and that's strange.
That is so strange. I mean, it stands so well, like through time. You know what I mean? Like, I see
Yeah.
a lot of stuff that is not like
So
visually.
I think that's what we think of as classic cinema. But
Yeah.
at the time, it wasn't always received that way,
Yeah. Every shot is beautiful on that thing. Very well placed, choreographed. You're just like the background. It makes total sense. There's no distraction. The color's amazing. You're just like, and I'm like, they don't make movies like this anymore. I mean, at least
No,
not to
they
that
do not.
level, right? It's different now. I think that was a thing that would happen at that time, right? And Gone with the Wind's probably another example that it's like,
Yeah, I think you just had technicians, people that knew how to do that, and it's like a lost form, essentially.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I just couldn't not stop.
It's like building the pyramids. Like, we don't know how they built the pyramids anymore either,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. That was pretty interesting to see, and pretty enjoyable actually. So that's pretty cool. Well, I'm glad that you can join me and just talk about stuff.
Yeah.
I did wanted to know a little bit more of your background and you know have a little bit of
This is what's keeping me busy right now,
it's
besides all the jobs and everything.
it's you're so blurry that I can barely. Oh, okay, so it's like a carving.
Let me see.
You're carving
Let's
something.
see. Let's see if we can get
Is it an owl? It's a horse.
Yes.
It's a horse. You're
I'm
carving.
carving a chess set.
Okay. All right.
So I've got a bunch of them.
Wow. Oh yes, you are doing that. Look at that. Yeah, it's so crazy. Like so I finally got this space, and then I got I made I built this second floor to it so that I can have more space because I have all these cars, my buses, and I want to convert them to electric, right? And so I got a lift, and then I'm putting up a sign because when I make videos, I gotta have the neon sign in the background. It's just kind of. But I'm 2 months in here already, and I haven't started any work because I'm still like obsessing about setting it perfect. It's like, and I got
Getting it set up.
tools and and like it's having a shop is such a big thing. People don't realize that.
It is.
Like you got to be so organized, or else it's a giant mess that doesn't quite work. It gets in the way, right?
Yeah.
And it takes a long time to get to a place where you realize that, and then you're. But I'm like, I kind of just want to finish it already. Just get to work.
I'm building a photo studio in our backyard, and yeah, we've been working on it for 4 months now, and we haven't even laid the concrete yet.
Oh no way! Okay, so it's that far behind. Wait, so 4 months is planning and designing and permitting or whatever. It's like all that stuff.
All that stuff, yeah.
Oh, geez. Those are long.
But hopefully, we're gonna start laying concrete in the next month, and then in the next 10 weeks, I'll have a beautiful. It's going to be a barn. We're building a barn, but then inside it's going to be a photo studio.
Nice. There you go. And that's because you do quite a bit of like photography still. You do.
Yeah, I'm trying to get more into product photography and that kind of thing. So I've been doing portraits of horses, and I've been doing like restaurant, like soups, and doing. I've been shooting some deodorants and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's I'm getting paid to do, not just shooting deodorant for fun, but
yeah.
But I've been working for a company called Art of Sport and doing some of their product stuff.
Oh, I see. And you still have your Alexa, or you got rid of that one?
Yeah.
You still have an Alexa?
I still have it. And the company that we shoot a lot of our test footage for the deep learning company, the AI company I'm working with. We shoot a lot of our test footage on the Alexa.
Oh.
And and I still shoot music videos. Well, I was still shooting music videos. I'm still doing post on some of them. And I'm starting to get into doing some lyric videos for a couple of bands because we can't shoot videos anymore, but I've got tons of footage. One of them I'm going to send you is I'm doing a song called Hyperactive for a band called the Dolly Rots, and the footage is Mexican wrestlers.
Okay.
That we shot at NASCAR.
At the NASCAR thing. There you go.
Yeah.
The footage never gets wasted.
I'll find a use for it somewhere.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten into selling stock footage?
I haven't, but I'm interested in it.
So
I shoot a lot of stuff that could be considered stock.
Yeah. There's this one company, Stalker, that they they're not looking after like the professionally shot beautiful stage, they're looking for more like home movie stuff. So they wanted to look like personal video, like phone video and that stuff, right? And so they'll put out like jobs and then they'll put out calls, it's like if you have footage of penguins at the zoo, and then you're like, well, I have this, or whatever, and you submit stuff. And there was 1 year that I made a few $1,000s off of footage that was there
from that company, Stalker.
Yeah, Stalker.com.
Check it out.
And it's always like that, right? Because I was like, well, I don't have a lot of stuff that is, I don't have time lapses, astral time. There's a lot of that stock footage that it's always like that, right? But this one is like, it's almost like if you have anything, whatever footage you have, even if it's shaky, even if it's not the most professionally shot, the content, it's really more valuable to them because they almost specialize in offering content to clients that is stock footage, but it could be anything.
Yeah, that's cool.
So Stalker. Think about it. I don't know. I thought about like, man, I could probably be doing much more than that, but I'm like, I'm doing so many things.
It's the amount of time. Yeah, it's how much time do you dedicate to it.
Yeah, I know that that year, whatever vacations I took, basically were free because I used, and that's, by the way, it was a few seconds of a shot here and a shot there, and boom, it paid for my whole vacation. I was like, yes.
Wow.
Let's go to Hawaii again. I was telling my
I just went to Yosemite, so maybe.
There you go.
Have you ever been to Yosemite?
I have, but never right. I haven't experienced that place properly. I think I've always been like just drive through it.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
My girlfriend and I are watching through there's like a national parks thing on, I think it's on PB, that you can get streaming that is the history of the national parks in this country, and it's amazing, and I highly recommend it. And we went to Yosemite for Christmas, and we want to go back like as soon as possible.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Did you see that film that the guy scales up? Free Solo? Free Solo?
Insane.
Right?
Insane. Especially because we've been at the bottom of that mountain and looked up. And it's insane.
I've never been there. So I've only seen that from like far. The crazy thing is that there was a piece that Motherboard did on me. They sent a full crew and they shot a thing. So what the DP was friends with that guy, and he was one of the guys up there like shooting, because and he himself is a climber, and he's a DP. Yeah. So there's only like a few amount of these guys that are both of those,
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, I saw your thing and your friends, because he was telling me about it when we were doing. But at that time, it didn't mean anything to me. Like, oh, you're doing some climbing with the guy that's whatever. And then you see the film, you're like, whoa,
What?
that's
Yeah, it's
crazy.
pretty amazing.
Yeah, that guy's all over the place. I follow him on Instagram, and every time he's like some other continent shooting some other piece. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
DPs live a pretty, I guess, a pretty exciting life. You find yourself in Africa, in the Sahara, and next thing you're in the Amazons, and you're like, whoa. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
I'm locked in my office here in quarantine. Well, no, I hope
all those DPs are locked in right now too. So
yeah, probably. This is worldwide. Yeah, this is unprecedented. We don't know, man. We don't know how the world's gonna be after this, but some of us will be fine.
yeah,
Some of us.
I think the world will be fine. It's just we'll need to get a vaccine and get people vaccinated, and then things can go more or less back to normal. Everything will be a little different, but
Yeah, let's hope so, man. Yeah, I mean, for the good of sanity of people, because I'm sure they're going crazy. I'm fine. I'm okay. Stay locked down. No, but I'm like, go to work, because if you don't go to work, then there's no money and there's no sales, and then I'm gonna be stuck in a bad place. Go to work.
there's always listen. People are like, oh, everything's collapsing, but that's not true. You see all those articles, so and so billionaire made $200 million, or
Yeah.
billions of dollars since lockdown. Like business is still happening.
Yeah.
Like people may be, like the entertainment business may be changing, but business is still happening. Even if everybody stayed in lockdown like forever, it would business would still find a way to happen. It's not going to stop.
Yeah.
Because
we're just not gonna sit around, do nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, a subset of the population would, but
I think that, I think in the next few years we may see a lot more animation, like animated shows for adults and things like that, because you can do that from lockdown.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, things will just change.
Yeah. And then remote stuff. Misa's super busy setting up these remote, setups for people to do, like live shows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Nonstop.
No, I was saying if we, I was picturing like get a small studio, put an Alexa in it that can be remote controlled, like wirelessly controlled, remote from somewhere else, and just have the talent show up, makeup ready. The Alexa's in the room already. Whoever's controlling the Alexa is off-site. And I bet that studio would work all day, every day.
I think so, yeah. I think companies are offering like kits like that, right? Because I think the first week everybody was using their phone. Even like late night TV show hosts, right? They were like,
yeah.
But then those 3 weeks in, they're like, oh, now it's a setup with lights and stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't think they're gonna go back. I think they'll be like, hey, I like it here. I don't like that commute.
Like, I haven't watched Saturday Night Live in years, and I watched all the Saturday Night Live from home stuff, and it felt really relevant. And I haven't felt Saturday Night Live has been relevant for a decade or more. You know what I mean? Like, when was the last time you watched Saturday Night Live before lockdown?
Yeah, no, I don't usually watch.
But did you watch the lockdown ones?
No, I didn't. I think I saw a couple of like clips maybe that my wife showed me, but I didn't.
Yeah, they're good, and they feel relevant. They feel like, oh, this is a relevant thing.
It's 7 o'clock. Are you done with work for the day?
Yeah, we're almost done.
Are you done with real work? Oh.
Yeah, I messaged them.
Yeah.
So, anywho, I should go.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me. Thank you for.
You're welcome. It was fun. I look forward to whatever you make out of this.
Uncut.
2-hour-long call.
Uncut. No. Yeah. No. We'll see. Usually we'll upload them like a couple of days after we record these, and then yeah, and then I think Brian is gonna send you like a picture, like a thumbnail. You want to share it on your socials or whatever.
Oh yeah.
By the way,
I've got some good thumbnails to share with you, some photos.
Oh, there you go.
You done recording?
No. Do you want to share any social information?
No particular.
No, you're not
No.
You're not pushing anything right now.
You could go to my Instagram. It's just, I think it's joe.rubinstein with an
There you
I, on
I see
Instagram
your
at
pictures in there.
joe.rubinstein. And I do, I'm doing a lot of photography experiments, recreating like what like a daguerreotypes and those types of old photos. So I've found some physical ways through light spectrum to replicate, because those old photos, like an old daguerreotype was like essentially like 2 ISO. You know what I mean? And it was because the way that you stop down your aperture on a lens makes your image clearer, more in focus. Well, daguerreotypes, they had a narrow spectrum. They only captured this like very narrow purple spectrum. And that is why they look so sharp. So if you look at those old photos, those old tintypes and stuff, they look crazy sharp. And it's not just because they're printed on metal, it's because they were extremely narrow spectrum. So I've created filter stacks that recreate those narrow spectrums, and it gives you those super sharp images. So
Wow.
if you want to see those, go check out my Instagram.
Oh, that's cool. There you go.
Yeah.
Something interesting. All right. Yeah, we'll put it on the description of the video.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank
Alrighty.
you.
You're welcome.
Stay in touch. Hopefully, we can see each other again after this whole nonsense. And
That'd be
hang out.
great.
Maybe we can shoot something
Let's do
one
it.
day.
I'd love to.
Right, again. And all right. We'll see you guys.
All right, man.
We'll see you on the next
Sounds good.
one. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.